Hey guys, I'm Rich. Welcome to Rich with Cars. On today's video, I'm going to be going over this beast behind me, which is the Lamborghini Urus. This particular version behind me is a 2021 version. I've never had a chance to actually get inside of a Urus before, and I want to show you guys what this Urus is all about and if it's a true Lamborghini under all this skin, I guess you could say. Find out as to why I'm not a big fan of it, and I would prefer probably taking some of the other competition in the segment. We'll be going over the exterior as always, the interior, engine, cargo, and of course driving impressions. So guys, as always, let's strap in and take a look. So the Lamborghini Urus first came out as Lamborghini's first ever SUV in February of 2018. They made some updates recently for the 2023 and 2024 model years, and now they're going to be coming out even with more changes with a hybrid powertrain with a new sort of facelift that they just put into place. So moving right from the front right here, we get to see that there is a massive opening to feed that V8 twin turbo that's nestled inside this hood over here. And we get to see that there's nothing that basically blocks off anything in the front in terms of rocks or bugs or anything that comes directly into the radiator. But the reason why they did that was purely because of the fact that they wanted to bring in more air. You get to see some massive openings here as well for additional cooling, and you get to see some fake vents right here. That's fake, and a little bit of fake over here, but not much, to be honest. Everything is primarily functional, and another massive opening here in the front as well. Of course, you have your, I think that's for your radar cruise control function, and then you have your Lamborghini badge. The headlights are pretty simple. I do like the look of them, but nothing too out of the ordinary. And then of course, from the hood design, you get to see simplistic, but also very squared off type of design. Instead of smooth lines, you get to see, like, you know, sharp edges on some parts of the hood itself. The color that you see over here is called Blue Cepheus Pearl, and it's sort of like a pearlescent blue. It definitely does attract a lot of attention. You get to see also some of the wide spoke design on the bottom part of the grille that sits right in front of the additional heat exchangers or cooling. That's, you know, very, very common to see wide spoke designs across the Lamborghini design language. So you'll see it, for example, over here. You'll see it also on the daytime running lights over here. It's a Y, and you'll see it throughout the vehicle as well. We get to see a lot of similarities in terms of sharp edges, in terms of design language to other Lamborghinis. Of course, this being an SUV and sharing the platform or the chassis with other Volkswagen Group vehicles or SUVs like the Porsche Cayenne, the Bentley Bentayga. They didn't have much in terms of trying to work with the overall design because they basically had a platform that they were starting off of. So this is not a bespoke platform or chassis for the Urus, but nevertheless, they still managed to do very well to make it look like a Lamborghini. These are 23-inch wheels, and housed right behind the wheels, you get to see some carbon ceramic brakes and a massive caliper. The fronts are basically wrapped in 285, 35, 23s. I do like the fact that the trim around the wheel well itself is in body color, so it keeps it very sort of upscale. One thing that I don't like is this fake grille. So this over here is just sort of an accent piece as opposed to a functional grille. And I'm not crazy also about the side view mirror. Nothing too special, too crazy about it. It's just, you got a little side blinker over here. You have some sharp edges over here, and you get to see a rear haunch on the rear hips over there. I do like the way that the windows are trimmed or shaped. You get to see over here that they basically get slimmer and slimmer as they move towards the rear. The rear is probably my favorite part of the Urus, despite the fact that you do still have some fake venting like over here, and you also have some fake venting here as well. It does not look from afar that it's fake, but then when you slip your fingers inside, there's no actual holes to allow air to pass through it. Generally speaking, I do like the rear the most from the Urus because of the rear taillights. Once again, as I mentioned before, you get to see that Y-spoke design feature. And of course, you get to see Lamborghini in its classic font being written out in the rear. And we don't notice over here any sort of windshield wiper. And once again, I believe that's probably because it's so flat, and then you have the wind that comes right under that spoiler over there, which probably helps take away some of the water that builds up in the rear windshield area. You get to the bottom with a sort of a, I guess you could say somewhat of a rear diffuser at the bottom. And you have, of course, quad tailpipes as well. That's your key, saying Lamborghini here on one side with the panic button right at the top. The other side, you got your buttons. They're not really like very deep buttons. That's one thing that I noticed. I do like the size of the key, but it's got some heaviness to it. And then you got your lock, trunk open, and then unlock over here. So just get to unlock it, and then you get a little beep when it actually locks. So let's take a look inside. Even though these are physical door handles, I believe that the mechanism is electronic, because this is a sort of electric or electronic sort of door release. Very sharp edges we get to see on the design. You have a relatively large door storage over here, space for a bottle. Easily you can put in like a 750 ml bottle over here with some additional space in the rear. You got everything over here is leather covered all the way from top all the way to bottom. You got some carbon fiber inserts. This seems like aluminum, if I'm not wrong. You got your door lock unlock, and then your window controls, side view mirror controls, your trunk release, and then oddly placed are your seat memory functions. So typically they're a little bit further up. Speaker cover on the door, and once again, you get to see some of that sort of like Y design as well. The seats are very well bolstered. I have not taken this car on a long drive, so I can't tell you how it feels on long drives, but in regards to design, it looks quite sporty. Not the sportiest that I've seen, but you have kind of like this sort of hexagonal stitching right there. Like I said, they're very, very well bolstered. You got quite a bit of seat adjustment over here. From the short period of time that I sat in them, I would say that they're probably a little bit less comfortable than other vehicles that I've been in that fall in the same segment, like the Aston Martin DBX 707. I definitely prefer those seats over these. I mean, it's really well laid out, and you got the Lamborghini embroidery right there on the headrest as well. A nicely appointed steering wheel with some leather perforation, a nice 12 o'clock sort of mark over here, and that seems like it's like in either plastic or aluminum, painted in silver. Gives it sort of a sporty vibe. A flat bottom steering wheel with aluminum sort of trimming over here at the bottom with the Italian flag at the bottom, representing, of course, Lamborghini, an Italian company. And then, of course, we get some controls here on the steering wheel. We get basically steering wheel mounted paddles. So most of the Lamborghinis that I've seen and sat inside of, they have column mounted. But I guess probably because this is an SUV and a little bit less sort of sport oriented as opposed to like their sports cars or their exotics, they decided to go with steering wheel mounted paddles. The feel of the paddles, it does feel kind of like plastic, and correct me if I'm wrong, they could be metal, but I don't like the click feeling that I get out of them. It's not very engaging, let's just say. Very sort of common and typical to what you see with other Volkswagen Group products, namely, for example, like the Audis. You do have a digital gauge cluster, which is very useful, and it does have quite a bit of information. With this gauge cluster, you get to see things like you can do like maps, for example, and then you have some other functionalities or information that you get also. And then, of course, if you change the drive modes, that's Sport. I was just in Strada. I go into Corsa. You guys can hear the exhaust opening up, and then finally I go into Sabbia Terra, which is pretty cool. Gives you additional information on your pitch and your dive, and also your angle in which you're at if you're going off-roading. And that's Neve, which is snow. And then back to Strada. So the gauge cluster changes slightly, and that is straight from Audi, by the way, or Volkswagen Group. I know I've recognized that before. You have your temperature over here, and then you have your fuel gauge right on the other side over there. If we move towards the middle, you get to see a couple screens. That's your infotainment screen over here, and that's your climate control screen. You could also change it to different types of things as well. Everything on the touch screen is not touch, it's more like push, and it's haptic feedback. I'm not sure if I'm a big fan, but maybe you guys can hear it a little bit. Something that is very different and unconventional is the gear lever. It took me a little while to get used to it, but you do have your park button, manual mode. That's your reverse over here. You just pull back on it. You can't push it forward, it's only just reverse. And then you go back to park. And if you actually want to go into drive mode, it's from the paddle over here. So you guys will see as I click on the paddle, it goes straight into gear. And these are basically your individual controls for your steering, suspension, and your powertrain. And then of course your start-stop button, which is placed right there. It's got a little toggle on top to, or cover if you want to call it. You can slightly slip your finger in there, but of course it's made to just lift up and push the button kind of like a fighter jet. You have a couple of cup holders here, your automatic brake hold, a little slot over there for your key, and it slips right there, and it's like nice and snug. And then you have your little armrest here in the middle that you can basically just open. It's not very deep. It also houses your wireless charging pad for your phone, and then you do have a couple of USB-C plugs. It's basically right there. The cool thing is that you can actually push the armrests forward or backwards, so it allows you to do that individually, of course. This, for example, feels a little bit cheap. This, for example, over here feels a little bit cheap. I do like the carbon fiber inserts. Also this, that basically separates all the different buttons depending on the options that you get. But this is like plastic, and I don't know if you can hear it. Kind of sounds a little bit cheap, especially for a Lamborghini. I mean, you're paying quite a bit of money for this car, and you don't want to be hearing these type of little cheap noises, I guess, little creaks. You do have a little bit of leather trimming here on the top, and then of course some Alcantara there, which definitely helps a lot. But there are some parts that I would say that feel a little bit cheap in general. Get a quick look here in the rear. You get to see a very similar sort of door cards. You get to see some Alcantara materials here in the rear, and some leather trimming all the way from top to bottom. It does seem pretty spacious. I'll show you guys how it looks like with me sitting inside. So the seat here in front of me is to my height, or is adjusted to my height, and you guys get to see there is quite a bit of knee room. I would say at least a good solid 4 inches between the seat back and my knees. You get some climate vents over there alongside with some controls for the HVAC. You do have a couple of USB-C plugs over there, alongside with a 12-volt plug as well. I'd say that it's a comfortable seating area here in the rear, and it does have quite a bit of space to fit 3 people, I would even say comfortably. So the trunk space of the Lamborghini Urus is quite normal, nothing too crazy. You do have a trunk cover over here, a cargo cover, which is covered in Alcantara, which is pretty nice. I do like the fact that you can just slide it off and it feels very smooth. You guys can actually take down the seats over there. Yeah, there's nothing too crazy in the trunk space. I'll show you guys what the cargo volume is in the rear. And then the other thing also that I've showed you also in some of the other SUVs is that you can actually raise and lower the vehicle height if you have some heavy items that you need to bring down the height of the vehicle, and then the loading space over here will end up going a little bit lower. So generally speaking, just like any other exotic SUV, you do have some space here in the rear. Nothing too out of the ordinary. I'm sure that a lot of the components are probably used from the Volkswagen group or probably from an Audi. At the end of the day, a lot of people basically say that the Lamborghini Urus is basically a reskinned Audi RSQ8 for double the price. I mean, I haven't actually checked out an RSQ8, but at the end of the day, it uses the same chassis and the same engine. Speaking of the engine, let's take a look at it. So we're here at the engine bay of the Lamborghini Urus. does use the same engine that we see across the Volkswagen Group, which is the 4-liter twin-turbo V8. This particular version of the engine in the Urus basically pushes 641 horsepower and 627 pounds per foot of torque. I'll put up the numbers on the screen. The engine bay in general doesn't look any different than, I guess, any of the other SUVs within the Volkswagen Group. Of course, you do have this cover over here that looks or gives it a sort of different look, a Lamborghini look, and then of course the firing order of the V8 you get to see over there. Nothing too out of the ordinary. You get to see your ECU over there. I mean, ultimately, it is a very well-performing vehicle. It does share a lot of its major components with some of the other brands within the Volkswagen Group, like the Bentley, the Audi, and the Porsche. They all basically share the exact same powertrain. But under the Lamborghini Urus, it pushes a little bit more power, and I guess it performs better because it's, you know, the vehicle or the SUV in general has been tweaked differently. It's been tweaked by Lamborghini itself to focus much more on performance in general. I'll also give you guys some of the fuel efficiency numbers alongside with some of the performance numbers as well, the 0 to 60 and top speed and all that good stuff. So driving in the Lamborghini Urus. So I've been driving this car around for a little while now, and have to say that I'm not super impressed with it, to be honest. I mean, of course, I haven't taken it to the track. I've read a few reviews and I've watched a few reviews where it actually performs quite well on track, but I mean, it doesn't, at least in my opinion, it doesn't really feel like a Lamborghini. It feels more like a luxury truck or a luxury SUV at the end of the day. In terms of steering, there's no real communication that I get from the road. It is quite responsive, but in terms of getting a feel, in terms of what I feel on the road, there's not much. It's quite numb. The other thing also is that the brake feel is not that great. I wouldn't say it's very progressive, to be honest. As I'm approaching the stop sign right here, you do get a brake like very early on the brake pedal, and you have to press even harder to get it to brake even more. So you know, I mean, every car is different, but for me, this is I would say that I'm not that impressed. In terms of the suspension, now I've been driving in Strada, which is the most relaxed type of mode, but if I put it into Corsa, which is basically race mode, of course the exhaust opens up. You definitely get more of that rumble from the V8, but the suspension itself is still quite soft. It doesn't really feel that sporty. I actually prefer the feel of the DBX 707. On automatic mode, when you have it in Corsa, the transmission is actually quite, it holds the gears quite a bit. Look, so it holds it quite a bit. And the other thing also that I'm not impressed with is it's not super responsive when it comes to the gear changes. There's a bit of a delay. I would say probably quarter of a second delay from the time that I actually shift to the time that it actually changes gears. Aside from that, it is pretty comfortable in here. You're not gonna get this car because you're gonna be racing on the track or anything like that. You're getting it because it's a Lamborghini. You got the name, and you want to be driving around in comfort at the same time. I haven't driven the RSQ8, for example, but I would not be surprised if they're very similar in terms of how they drive. I don't feel like the Lamborghini Urus is actually that much of a special feel when you're driving the vehicle. It does feel like some of the other performance trucks out there. I haven't driven the BMW X5M, but I'm almost 100% certain that the BMW X5M probably has more sporty intentions as you're driving it, and probably a stiffer suspension as well. It does actually push quite a bit though. It's very, very powerful. Very powerful, to say the least. Driving impressions in general, it's a good daily driver, to be honest. It's comfortable, it's spacious, it's got convenience in terms of you know, storage space, but in terms of a good feeling sporty drive, I wouldn't say it's that much different than, let's say, for example, the DBX 707. In fact, the DBX 707 I preferred. I would probably take the DBX 707 over this. I don't even feel that special driving this vehicle when I'm driving. Yeah, I've gotten a few looks, especially because of the exterior color on this vehicle, but I definitely felt more special, I guess you could say, with a DBX 707. The interior even of this 707 is much nicer. And as well, I find that the sporty intentions or the sportiness of the DBX 707 is much more apparent than it is on the Urus. That's my opinion, though. Ultimately, would I recommend this over, let's say, a 707 that I've driven before? I wouldn't. I wish I could drive the RSQ8, because a lot of people basically compare the RSQ8 to this, and I'm very curious to see how the RSQ8 drives compared to the Urus, given the fact that they have the same engine and similar chassis. Of course, there's also the Porsche Cayenne Turbo, which also shares the same chassis and the engine. I would probably prefer the Porsche over this, frankly speaking. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed my impressions of the drive of the Urus. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick review of the Lamborghini Urus. This was my first time spending time with it, and frankly speaking, guys, I was not very impressed. Of course, it's got the Lamborghini skin, Lamborghini badge, but ultimately, I still think and feels like an Audi. And I can see why people say that it's basically an RSQ8, because in fact it is, with a Lamborghini skin on top of it. And I really do hope that I get a chance to review the Audi RSQ8, because then it'll allow me to give you guys a true impression of how similar or different it might be to the RSQ8. I would prefer using or taking an Aston Martin DBX 707 over this. I felt much more special driving it, and it got more sporty intentions with better fit and finish, quality and materials than the Lamborghini Urus over here behind me, in my opinion. But as always, guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. I want to give a huge thanks to Aston Martin of Orlando. I'm going to put some information in the description below. They do have this Urus right now up for sale as a pre-owned vehicle, so go make sure to take a look at it in their inventory. And I'm going to put some information up on the screen as well for Aston Martin of Orlando. As always, guys, thank you very much for all the views, all the likes. Please keep on sharing, and don't forget to check out some of my other videos in my library. I'll see you guys on the next one. All right, guys, thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.